Welcome, everybody, to our Tuesday Live. You've got the guru, you got the test geek. We always start our live stream with some housekeeping. So let's just do some housekeeping, and we'll get to the question about the Sharpe ratio here in a sec. Let us know where you're from. Let us know what exam you're taking, and your questions. If you put SIE with a capital Q, then we'll know, what exam. So we're not wasting a bunch of time on that, and can tell you whether on that particular exam it's a big deal or not a big deal. So if you follow that format, it'd be helpful. Talk amongst yourself. We have victorious test takers that pop in every now and again to share their victories with us. And they're probably a better source of debrief than even Brian and myself. But we always like to start with debrief. And, when I was in the Marine Corps, I would brief pilots on their way up, tell them what their threats are. And when they come down, debrief them to, make sure we can pay it forward. Same thing when you're taking your test, right? Tell you a brief. If you are not sure how testable something is, you can ask Brian or myself or one of our victorious test takers. And debrief, we can tell you what people, saw. Now, remember, every draw is a little different. This was an SIE debrief. Only 2 questions on options. So options are going to make or break you on the SIE exam. So, should you learn it? If you're going on to a Series 7, I think you should pay the price to learn options. But if you tell me you missed the SIE because of options, I'm going to say you had other problems because it's mainly recognition. 3 or 4 mutual funds. You really want to power up on mutual funds for the SIE because no matter where you're going from there, 6, 7, 65, 66, learn it once, get tested 2, 3, 4, 5 times. He said surprisingly 5 questions on munis, but remember 529s are also considered munis. Enable accounts are munis. So I doubt that was 5 questions on geos and revenues. My guess is probably geo revenue and, a 529 or enable account. Make sure, ladies and gentlemen, on the SIE, on the 7, the 65, 66, that you can do tax-free and tax equivalent yields without breaking a sweat. You need to be able to do that as a matter of routine, that math. A couple on retirement plans, educational plan. Make sure on the SIE you can contrast a 529 with a Coverdale and know, why the Coverdale is the better deal, so to speak. I'm being prejudicial, but so is the test. So I'll just tell you the 529 is a better deal. A split, make sure you can do a split. This was a 2 for 3. Defensive stocks, remember, are companies to deliver products and services resilient to the business cycle. Make sure you know 2 calendar quarters declining GDP is the definition on the SIE of a recession. What needs to be disclosed on a U4? No statutory disqualifications, conviction of a felony, misdemeanor involving embezzlement money securities. I call the third one, don't we know you from somewhere? Have you been suspended, revoked, or, have we seen you before? Make sure you know the accreditation standards for Reg D, 1, 2, 3, right? $1 million, 200, 300. Know the difference between prospectuses and official statements. Remember, official statements are munis. Prospectuses would be a public deal. Offering memorandum would be a private placement. All right, that's the SIE 7. This is a brief, not debrief, but I can't tell you how many people, 7 this week, I've had to talk people off the ledge. Don't overdose on margin and don't overdose on partnerships. All test prep vendors go total overkill on both partnerships and margin. So, you got more target-rich environments elsewhere. This is 65, 66 debrief. I notice we already have the queue, a question on the Sharpe ratio, please. I'm going to talk about it in just a sec, but don't overdose on quantitative analysis. 3 discounted cash flow definitions. No calculation, just definition. My guess would be dividend discount model, dividend growth model, and DCF for a bond. Always shows up. Make sure you can contrast an ETN with an ETF. I would be able to do that on all the exams, SIE 7, but particularly 65 and 66. 1 question on a PE ratio. 1 question on Canadians visiting that they have Canadian broker dealers. Fundamental analysis, no surprise. 529 in Coverdale, same deal on 65, 66. Can you contrast them? And can you tell me why the 529 is a better deal? UPMA shows up on every exam. Make sure you got UPMAs down. one minor, one custodian per account, tax ID number, no margin. NAV, slobs over bliss, that's where we place orders. Surprise audits. S Corps, you're going to get a question on business structure. Now, surprisingly, I did a debrief and somebody didn't get that, but you definitely need to be able to contrast like the business structure of a LLC and a subchapter S and a partnership with that of a C Corp. So make sure you can do that. Transfer on death question. Okay, so let's go to our next thing. Let's go to our comments, and I think you're in the loop for first. I think I skipped the line. I jumped the queue here. We go with the person who's first in the queue. There we go. So Sharpe ratio, I'll add Brian add to this if he feels compelled to do so. Let's say that you're an investor and you give Brian $1 million and you give Dean $1 million. And you say, I'm having a beauty contest. And gentlemen, at the end of the year, whoever has the best return gets the entire $2 million or what's left of it or what's grown to. So we're having this beauty contest. The investor is the judge. And unbelievably, Brian and I tie. We both show up and say, we've got you $1 million too. And I'm not ready to concede yet. I say to you, well, listen, I think I'm still the winner. Brian was kind enough to tell me, share with me his portfolio. If he knew what an underhanded person I am, he probably wouldn't have done that. I'm joking. I said, but I have calculated the Sharpe ratio on both of our portfolios. I kind of think of the Sharpe ratio as kind of like alpha for a particular portfolio. I'll let Brian correct me if he thinks that's not a good analogy. But anyways, I say, listen, I think I should win because I got you a better risk-adjusted return. So that's what the Sharpe ratio is about. It's about risk-adjusted return. I think the only thing you need to know on 65, 66 is a higher Sharpe ratio. It's named after Professor Sharpe. He's a serious math geek, as most of these quantitative guys are, is better. And it's about the risk-free rate of return and standard deviation. Anything that you want to add to that, Brian?
No, it's certainly not calculated on the test.
Oh, no, I wouldn't believe you if you told me you had to calculate it. But listen, if you got past perfect, for example, as your test prep vendor, who knows? They might give you a question and ask you to crunch it. I think I saw Kaplan questions that we wanted to help on, and we were asking him to calculate some crazy thing. So Kaplan, all the test prep vendors, I think, go overboard on quantitative analysis. But if you're scared of it, you're going to swear you had, 100 questions on quantitative analysis. Vijay, you could re-enter that back into the queue if you'd like some further, comments on it. But I think that's pretty much it. Oh, you have a second question. Inflation adjusted return is pretty straightforward. They're just going to give you a return. Say, your client's return was 8%. CPI was 8. Like it's been, 8 point whatever. What was their constant dollar return or their inflation adjusted return? And you would say 0. You simply net the inflation rate against the return. That is very testable. I can't imagine any 65, 66 where you're not going to have to do that. Vijay says, hi, Brian. Series 66, woohoo. So, for most people, Brendan, that's the last leg of your testing journey, right? So you're going to hopefully get what I call your test taking registration hat trick. 3 successes in a row, 3 victories in a row. 66 needs to be treated with respect. So I would say that of the 63 as well. I can't tell you how many test takers who get their first 2 victories. I don't know if I'd call it hubris, Brian, but you need to give that NASA. That's a different dragon. Don't be fearful, but treat it with respect. And it's really just if you don't want to end your testing journey with a defeat if you already got 2 victories. So. Yeah, hey, there's a real 66 victory, victorious test taker, Mike. So, Mike, if you stay in the chat, if you have any, if you don't want to talk to Dean and Brian about your 66, we have a victorious test taker, Mike. Thanks, Mike, for popping in. I love it when victorious test takers come in. It's good for morale. It's good because they don't have to take Dean or Brian's word for it in terms of whether it's testable or not. Maybe someday somebody will show up in our thing and say, you lied to me. You told me it wasn't there. And it was. So I had a guy one time, I told him not to worry about variable life. Listen, the guy passed. They came back and said, you told me not to worry about it. I had a question. I go, I would hope all of you as test takers are operating from abundance. And what I mean by that is that you're high enough scores on your practice test that when you get something and you don't want to deal with it, you can just guess B, assign it to the universe, and move on. You don't want to be in a position where every question becomes the difference between whether you're going to pass or not. So hopefully you'll be feeling good when you go down there and know that you have abundance, not scarcity, in terms of right answers. Yeah, that's fine. I don't think, not like me, I don't think I'd be worried. I mean, you got 3 days, you're getting a 70, depends on your vendor, but you should pick up questions. If you go to the channel, Brian has been kind enough to let me explicate his practice final, his Series 7, and that has very strong correlation. So you can watch me do it, hit pause, see what your answer is, and see what that score is. And I'll give you a very good score that you can kind of count on, because, you know, the vendors, some of them, you can tell us who your vendor is, but some of them I feel are a little harder. Then for another, I don't know why people get confused about this. For another, I think it's $19 or $20. You can buy the PDF. It's just a PDF. It's not an rationale. But if you want the physical dead tree version of that final, Brian will sell it to you as a PDF. You get a 20% discount, Guru 20, if you want the hard copy. Now, I suggest buying that. 3 days, I don't know if you got time to watch all of Brian's videos, even though that's a wonderful value as well. That's $80 with the discount. But that being said, what I like to tell people to do with his practice final, the PDF, is they'll marco out the wrong answers. And just the night before or morning of, read Brian's questions and his right answers and his rationales. This is a way maybe get your brain flowing and maybe pick up a couple points. And I would say that about all of the exams. So all of the exams, all the series exams, you can find the Test Geek practice final there. There's usually a Kaplan final you can watch me do, and there's one of my finals. My finals aren't correlated. My finals are based on what people tell me they see. So, you know, don't send me a comment, think, I got a 90 on Dean's final, I'm a genius. No, right? You know, you get a 90 on Brian's, you're a genius. You get a 90 on mine, you're going to see stuff from mine because it's completely debrief. It's not anything other than that. Kentucky, all right. Home with some fine bourbon. I'm a traditionalist. I don't think you can call whiskey that's not from Kentucky bourbon. I got into this guy in Texas who told me he was making bourbon. I said, you cannot make bourbon outside of Kentucky. You can make whiskey, you know, but I think it has to be from Kentucky. Whoop. There you go. There you go. So, you know, woohoo. I think you're in pretty good shape. I mean, I don't want to have your career at risk, but I can't believe if you watch my 66 playlist and Brian's videos that you're by osmosis not going to be damn close to passing. I mean, don't put your career at risk. But that being said, you know, a lot of time with Brian and Dean, I think definitely improves your prospects. Woo! Thanks. Another victorious test takers. Razzle, thank you so much. Hey, you know, I'm getting a lot of feedback on that, Razzle. I have a whole series of videos I've done. I was hesitant to do them, but people were telling me they're using the some of my videos as audio files and listening to it in the car on their way to the exam or the night before. And I thought, well, gee, why not just make a video for that? So I've made a whole series of video called yours. It's called Series 7 in 60 minutes, but there's one for each of them. And it's just to get your flow, kind of like what I said, what you might want to do with Brian's PDF. This is my version of, you know, listening to a stream before you go to bed or nature sounds, whatever. And people have found a couple points. I mainly make it for rhythm. So I don't want people to think they're going to learn anything. I would use it as an intellectual inventory on your way to the exam. But that being said, people have told me they found a couple points. So I have that for the 7, the SIE, the 66, 65, the 24, the 10, and I'll have a 9 out later this week. Yeah, I think if there were truth in labeling, it would be called the bond broker's test. A lot of us call it the stockbroker's test, but you know, truth in labeling is way more questions on bonds, right? You got muni bonds, you got corporate bonds, you've got credit risk, you got interest rate risk. So I don't know, easy 20 on bonds. What do you think, Brian?
Oh, yeah, every bit of that. Yeah.
I think that on the 7, good news, Razzle passed. But on the 7, I think that the weighting, remember, function 3 is 91 questions, munis, options, mutual funds, and then you throw in the rest of those bonds. That's where target rich. Brendan, that 65 is a beast. It's a beast. You know, and boy, those 1 point, it's not knowledge deficit. I usually ask, did you change an answer? You know, ugh. Yeah, your 66 will do it. So you don't have to wait 30 days for that. And who knows? How long ago did you have your 63? You might not need to do much work to put yourself over the top on the 66. What are your thoughts, Brian, on that?
Yeah.
I sometimes tell people the opposite way, Brendan. I've had people miss the 66, and then I recommend they go get a 63, 65.
Right.
I don't see this sequence as much, but I would encourage you to do a practice final, see how you do. Listen, we're not here to plug our stuff, Brian and myself, the test geek. But Brendan, you could go take a 66 practice final, 100 questions from the test geek, get a score. I think you're going to find it very familiar. So that would be why I do that, just to see how familiar that content still looks to you. It should look, I would think, pretty damn familiar. Yep, no surprise, no surprise. I appreciate the feedback. I can't stress to you enough, as a Series 7 test taker, it is not target rich. I wish that people would listen to me.
How many times do you think we say that a week? That there's just not that many margin questions on the 7.
Yeah, and whether it's Pass Perfect or Kaplan or STC or training consultants, my God, I feel like going to your license exam manual, whoever your vendor is, and just ripping the margin section out of there. Know the classical margin equations. I just explicated. Forgot to tell you about that. I try and keep the channel as clean as I can, given that there's 200 hours of content and all those series playlists. But there's a lot of videos that I don't put on the channel, that I put them on the Reddit and I put them on the Facebook thing, rather than cloud up the channel with all that stuff. But just today, I explicated a 10-minute short margin question. So you can go to the Reddit and the search bar. I'm not a big Facebook fan, but some people use Facebook, so I put them there too. But if you go to the Reddit search bar, you can sometimes put in whatever you're looking for, and you'll find me magically appear in a video going over a question with somebody. And I don't put that content here. But the one the guy wanted me to go over was a short question in the SMA calculation. And I was tempted to say, is that Pass Perfect? Yeah, and the other thing is those firms, man, I tell you, they're such, authoritarians, I guess. Well, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but, Brian and I are always about just getting you past the test. As Brian says, we're bridges from, Pass Perfect to, the real test. And sometimes it's harder to be a bridge for Pass Perfect because they do get people in the weeds. And it's some firms I know are forced learning. I forget there's a term for it where they won't let you move on to unit 14 until you get some astronomical score in unit 13. And as we're discussing, if that's unit 13 Pass Perfect margin, oh my God, you could be stuck there forever. I'm competent as a margin clerk. And even I, have to really give some thought to Pass Perfect questions and go, okay, well, hold on. I fall back on the classical margin equation. It was final 5 today. So sometimes I don't know if they purposely try and make them harder, but it's like me. I think I've got 4 practice finals, and you run out of things to ask people, and then you start getting into the weeds a little bit as a person who writes content. So some firms do that by design, make those finals tougher, and some it's accidental. But remember, I think you can easily add some points. So I don't know what your firm's expectation is, but that person earlier in the live stream who said that they're taking a exam and getting a 70. Yeah. Now, listen, my standard is a little lower. Maybe Brian's is as well. As a fake accountability partner, not your real one. I feel like you should test if you're in the 70 range. And I feel you have a more than 50% chance to pass. Very likely. I think you're not at risk if you're getting a 70, particularly on Pass Perfect. Below 70, I think you're at risk. You don't want to be there. There's people get below 70 on practice finals pass, but not where you want to be. Below 60, you have a knowledge deficit. Now, for good news is, I guess, if you can get to that plateau on Pass Perfect, you're in good shape. You're getting a 75, 76 on Pass Perfect. You got no worries. Remember, we answer questions. So you don't have to, if you have any questions, put them our way. Well, kudos, Kendall, General Securities Principal. Woohoo. And 52, working on the 53. Oh my God.
Wow.
Yeah. 53, Kendall, is the exam I came closest to failing. This was years ago. And hubris. I said, what can they ask me about a muni bond? I don't know. That's a bad attitude. And then I sent away for a flaky course. I didn't know it was flaky Kindle, but when it arrived, I made a bad assumption. I said, well, flaky book, flaky course, a flaky test. Never dawned on me. Somebody would send me, sell me prep vendor materials that aren't up to the task. Oh my God. I went down there. I was using all my test taking tricks, Sesame Street trick, reduction to the ridiculous, principle of mutual exclusion, too long to be wrong. It was all A rules, administrative rules, D rules, definitional rules, G rules. I passed. In those days, it was 72. I got a 72. Woo! Maximized my study effort. Didn't learn any more than was required. Kind of a weird sequence you're doing. Then you're going to circle back on the 66 and the 4. Wow.
And the 4. Wow.
Well, I hope that your pay grade and bonuses reflect all that work once you get it all done.
Really?
Daniel, I'm not sure what your reference on very testable is, but if you can add to that for us, that'd be great. So. I call them keywords or pivot words. I say absolutely. Initial, new account. I find that to be more of a problem on NASA exams where there's some really important words about, who are you being asked about, whether it's the broker dealer or the agent or the investment advisor. I find that more on NASA exams, but Cameron, I would say these are giant reading tests, and that's why you got to get a good night's sleep tonight before, because I don't know about you, but when I'm not well rested, my reading skills diminished, or they're really bad. I can't read, and then reading something I wasn't asked. So, Brian, what do you think about that?
About keywords?
Yeah, I call them pivot words, or
it's hard to come up with a list of them.
Well, yeah, no, I wouldn't be studying a list
for any particular test. But I call them connecting dots. Pivot words, connected dots. But yes.
Cameron, I would say this, particularly on NASA exams, I always recommend that people read the question once for context, just to kind of say, okay, what do I think I'm being asked? If it's a long paragraph one, I like to read the last sentence first, just so I see where it ends up. I like to see what answers are being offered to me. And then I say, okay, let me, try and answer this question. I particularly on NASA exams think those exams aren't as difficult if you can figure out what you're being asked and what the answers offered to you are. Now, I would stipulate that can be very difficult to figure out what you're being asked in plain English and what those answers on offer to you are. But all of these exams are reading exams. Here's an example. I just had one today, Cameron. In our Reddit for Series 24s and 9s and 10s, the guy was doing a question, and he said, well, how come this question, the answer is different? And the reason it was different is one question was about a firm's do not call list, and the other was about the national do not call list. So there you go. One word made that different, right? So I'll just give you another example, Cameron. On NASA exams, accessible gift of non-accessible stock, 3 letters, or a gift of accessible stock, right? That changes the answer. So you got to be real careful. So I'm with Brian. I don't think you should make a list of, keywords or pivot words, as I call them. But when you're doing questions, make sure you're trying to practice, journal rehearse your performance. I call practice questions and real question performance opportunities. So make sure on those performance opportunities that you're practicing what you're going to do on the exam. You brought the full Brian, the full Monte from Brian. Woohoo! Great bridge. That's what he's doing, man. That's what he's doing for that money. Listen, I haven't had anybody who has ever. Well, I know Brian. I've never asked Brian. Maybe next week we get together. I was like, has anybody ever asked for a refund? I haven't had anything other than good things, being said about Brian's content in terms of doing successfully what he wants to do, which is help you bridge your study materials to the real test. So, then you watch my 66 and 60 minutes. I'm a little embarrassed, Brian, of those, for people who are my peers like Brian. I'm a little embarrassed that I even made such videos. They're working. So I'll have one for the 9 here soon. All right, got the P. Woohoo, Jeff. Woohoo. So Jeff, what'd you get a P on? What P did we get? Remember, because Jeff, we want to hold you out as a victorious test taker, and if we know what exam, then people can say, "Hey, I don't believe Jeff and Brian and Dean." So, hey, Jeff, is that true? Did you? And then you can. Jeff hopefully doesn't say no. They're lying. There's 20 margin questions and there's 15 partnership questions. So, let us know, Jeff, what exam you took. I got a question on C shares. Wow. Okay. Well, that's, I would know the share classes. If not even the question, just the answer set, right? I can't imagine you're not going to have an answer set that has A shares, B shares, C shares. Yeah, Brian?
I've heard this before. I've heard from a couple of people that they have seen a C share question. I can't imagine what they ask other than it's an asset-based fee. But as far as I know, I don't know any other thing. But I have heard a couple of people say that they've seen a C share question. And I don't recall what test Jeff is taking, but I believe I heard it on the 65.
Okay. So I definitely would know. I don't know, Jeff, it was in the context of this, but remember the maximum 12B1 promotional expense that you can charge and still hold yourself out as a no-load fund is 0.25. That's pretty testable. And over the life of the fund, it would be 0.75. I'm not sure if they could you make up a question, Brian, where you would throw that into the context of a C share? I'm not sure.
I do believe that there is a test question where the answers are A shares, B shares, C shares, D shares or something.
Yeah.
Which one is an asset-based fee?
Okay.
I that's the only thing I can come up with.
Well, sometimes that's it. It's rumored. And then, we keep, finally, like I had this kept coming up in debrief, Brian. And for the life of me, I couldn't figure out what these people were trying to tell me they saw, and then finally dawned on me what they were talking about was a dividend reinvestment program of a mutual fund, the DRIP, and the idea that the dividends, unless it's a federally tax exempt mutual fund, it's going to be a taxable event to you when you receive the dividends, whether you reinvest them or not. But for the life of me, it took me because when you go into the cave to slay the dragon, sometimes you come back out and you're trying to describe the dragon, and we're like, oh yeah. So hopefully, maybe we'll get somebody who will nail that one. I'm going to be teaching a open enrollment 65, 66, and I'm not allowed to ask you like what was question 35, but I can say, hey, can you look out for a funky C share question?
Right.
I had a question on 65 in regards to an advisor who's taking a cruise out of a state, not mentioning he had a place of business, live there. However, the question did say the administrator deemed him qualified to provide advice. Is he allowed to provide advice or solicit, or is this more of an answer where the administrator would not say that? You want to take that one, Brian?
Yes. I was hoping you would defer to me. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have heard this one as well. And again, I've heard it two different ways. I've heard it as an IAR and I've heard it as an agent. And the answers are completely different depending on which one of those they're asking. If it's an IAR, then you're missing one other piece of information, and that is whether he's with a federal IA or a state IA. I believe it's with a federal IA. Therefore, he can go on all the cruises he wants. It's not a place of business. He doesn't have to be registered in this particular state or that particular state because there's no place of business.
Love it. Make sure, too, that I can't tell you how many people get hung up on that idea of, are you an investment advisor representative of a federally covered advisor? Because if so, there's all kinds of things that don't matter. De minimis, place of business, none of that.
That's
so
right.
Just make sure when you're reading questions, is it a state covered or federally covered investment advisor? And are you an investment advisor rep of the state covered firm, or is it a federally covered firm? It's just huge. Brian has, I forget what he calls it, but he's got these
definition of persons.
Whatever it is. sometimes what I do, Brendan, is I will have the person put in his little Brian's little boxes. Okay, there's you, there's your firm. Are you federally covered? And then we just go through it based on that. I highly recommend if you can put yourself in the context of a question. What I like to do is say, "Oh, I'm the guy on the cruise, okay, and I'm soliciting. I'm doing whatever I'm doing." Daniel, kudos, 2 testing victories, and I would imagine you passed your SIE as well. So kudos on all your testing victories, getting all those P's. P. All right. Fantastic. Boy, you know, yeah. I don't think these things are in English to begin with. So, you know, so
They're a
particularly the math
language of
exam.
themselves. Yes.
Yeah, I have a young lady. She's been my favorite. I've chatted her up for the last 12 months. And can you imagine her primary language was Mandarin? And she gets so frustrated because she put things in a Google Translator, it wouldn't even come back as any equivalent Chinese word. So I'm just very sympathetic. You can petition for extra time. You want to make sure you do lots of practice questions. You want to make sure you reach out. We're here to help. So, if you need to on the Reddit or in the community page or whatever, if you're watching the videos, you can just put in the comment. Brian also has free videos on YouTube as well. So if you put them in the comment box, we can respond to you. And I can tell you that a lot of times it is an ESL issue with some exams where somebody's, reading it in a way that is, again, it's not, the grammar is atrocious on these exams. So it can be a grammar issue as well. So I lost that argument. Kaplan purposely tries to match the poor grammar of the exam. So what can I tell you? Watch Brian's videos. They're amazing. Woohoo. Yeah, to get my crown, I do offer plaque worthy. So if you join me for what I call the trifecta in a Kaplan class, you come to the SIE the first month of the quarter, the second month of the each quarter, and the last month of each quarter, I do a 66. You get all those, and I give you a little tombstone to commemorate. And it has your date of where you attended class and the date of your passes. Some Chotsky to put on your desk, but definitely plaque worthy. I think they'd make a fortune if
Is
they
it
just.
made of lucite?
What's that?
Is it made of lucite?
Yeah. It looks like a banking tombstone, exactly. So it's like bankers have on their desk. I think they make a fortune if when you pass, they say, "Would you like a plaque?" They're probably afraid somebody would make the plaque imply that they're approved by the regulators or something. Woohoo! So Brian's videos did the thing they're supposed to do. Love it. I listen. If you got it, I know it's causes anxiety. I do think you're going to be. I don't know what test you're taking, but you can add some points. The 65, I don't like that score. 72, it's past perfect. And remember, you have all these days to close that gap. So you just got to stay diligent, dedicated, disciplined, organized, and keep. Even though that's negative feedback, you want to try and push that consistently into the mid 70s. And then you got to fold up on Sunday, get a good night's rest. So, you've got what? Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, you got 4 more working days. And I certainly think you can push those scores. I don't like the 65. So let's try not see any 60s. Let's, if I were accountability partner, I'd say how many practice tests I'm going to see between now and Saturday, one every other day. Again, I don't know if you're a full-time studier and that would impact as your accountability partner, what I expect to see from you. If your full-time job is to study, then I'm going to have a higher expectation of your activity level. Opposite aerobics, call up, put down. I also do the T, right?
Yeah. Let's see Past Perfect do that, huh?
Yeah, that's right. Oh, I bet they would think we're goofballs. All right, cool. Well, like I say, Kevin, I don't like seeing 60s. Training consultants, I don't, all vendors, I try not to get into vendor discussions. And I always qualify by saying I'm an independent contractor to Kaplan. I receive no compensation for people buy Kaplan products, just like I don't receive compensation from Brian on the use of the discount code. But that being said, I think Past Perfect puts people at risk. Some people who can't push past the obtuseness. But good news, it's too much stuff, and that's better than enough. I think training consultants is a little light, Kevin. So I would highly recommend a supplement with training consultants where that's a Kaplan Q Bank. With my discount code, you can get that for about $60 at checkout. So I would add some kind of a paid supplement. You got Brian's paid supplement. He's got his videos. So you might want to consider doing that. I can't imagine with a paid supplement, whether it's Brian's videos or a Kaplan Q Bank. And remember all the free stuff, Kevin, on my channel. There's, 20 videos on the 66 playlist. But using a supplement, I can't imagine we're not going to push those training consultants.
Oh, man. If you're that close, those supplements, absolutely, Dean.
So
that's going to push you over that to the other
yeah,
side.
yeah. So Kevin, maybe you want to give it maybe I don't know when your test date is. By the way, if you're testing tomorrow, then what I just said is moot.
Yeah.
But if you have some time, maybe you try and push that training consultant score into the 70, maybe get a couple more tries and then say, I'm going to supplement. I heard, Kevin, the other day they were doing a training consultant class. I thought this was funny. And they were telling me, Brian, they were passing around the link to my channel and the training consultant course. And the instructor got a little ballistic. I was kind of laughing. I thought that was kind of fun.
Interesting.
Woohoo! 1-0. I say the journey, Michael, of 3-0 begins with 1-0. So I love it. Love it. All right. I'll see you in November. So, Michael, tell me, just make me know, hey, this is Michael G. If you want to be known. Now, you don't have to reveal yourself in class if you don't want to. But, that's our 3-day class. That's November 7th through the 9th. And you can register online. And again, Guru 10 is the discount code. A lot of companies are paying for the Kaplan. So maybe that, if it's your own dime and you want to save a couple bucks, put that in there. Well, I think you should make your own. So, Justin, I would start with saying Brian has his quick, what do you call those things, Brian?
Quick notes, class notes.
Quick notes. And Kaplan has what are called quick sheets. They're $19 and you can get them for $17. I think they're a good idea of a jumping off point. But Justin, you can also Google your exam and a dump sheet and see what everybody else has done as their dump sheet. But I think yours should be unique to you. I think you should make your own. So I would certainly have an options matrix. I would have a teeter-totter. I'd have slobs over bliss. I'd have derp. I have a lecture that I think also can give you some good ideas on a data dump sheet called Series 7 Tips, Tricks, and Memory Aids. And you might want to check that out if you're taking a Series 7. But we don't know what exam you're taking, Justin. I think it's a placebo, but if it's something that helps you, then by all means. If I told you could have one sheet of paper with it, anything front and back, what would be on it? I know that Brian suggests that you every day write his, what is it, the person thing, the cheat sheet? What do you call that thing?
Definitions of persons.
Persons, yeah. So you don't use the word cheat sheet in an exam. That's a bad word. But Brian says, I think they're to write it down every day. Is that what your suggestion is, Brian?
Yeah. Same thing with the options grid, right? Copy that down every day. And
what I find, I to some people, Justin, I'm jealous. They can just, the lights go on and they get it. Yeah. Me, I have to practice, drill, and rehearse. So whether it's my options matrix and I do it like 50 times, lights go on and they go out again and then go on again. And then someday, hopefully before test, I'm like, I get it. If it doesn't, you just got to go with what you got, which is your cheat sheet. A customer has a margin account at a broker dealer and has not borrowed any funds or securities from the firm. So that means we've got his documentation. He has signed the credit agreement. He signed the hypothecation agreement. The loan consent form is optional. He has $160,000 of marginable securities. So that's what we're going to lend against, right? That's what we're going to lend against. So he can right now, based on that, have $80,000 in cash, or he could buy another $160,000 worth of securities. He has $60,000 non-marginal, means we can't lend against Travis. So on the test, that would be options for test purposes, penny stocks. Based on these values, what's the total value margin securities? Well, I just gave you the answer, right? The customer can purchase without being required to deposit additional funds. It's 360. It's going to be another one. I don't see your D choice here. It's 160, right? Because I would lend you 160,000. You'd have 320. Oh, the cash. I forgot about the cash. So how much securities can the without that? So you got 80,000, 160 in buying power, and the 70,000 cash is 140. I'm gonna say 300. Is that what you're saying, Brian?
I have no clue.
I would get the way I would do this. I would reverse engineer it, where I end up with a debit balance that is half of the equity. So Travis, let me walk you through this again. Now that I know where the question's ending. So your $70,000 in cash will buy you $140,000 in securities. Right. That's pretty straightforward, right? If you buy Apple's $140 stock, Travis.
I see what it's 300.
Yeah. So if you're going to buy 1,000 shares of Apple at 140, Travis, in your margin account, I'm asking for 70,000. So with the cash, you can buy 140. Now you have $60,000 in collateral. That's collateral. So if we actually did the margin equation on that, you would have excess equity of 80. And so you could have that as cash, or you can have that as buying power. And so that would be another 160 you could buy. So 160 and 140 is 300 without coming up with any additional money. So the answer there, I'm assuming, is your B choice. Again, I can't imagine these would all be separate issues, Travis, on the exam itself.
This is not an exam question, right?
Yeah, I don't think so. Obviously, yeah. You see, Travis, Brian, and I both know that's a test prep vendor margin question.
Yeah.
So, but that being said, I know you can't buy certain securities are ineligible, Travis, for purchase on margin. New issues, I would know, cannot be purchased on margin. It's a new issue 30 days from the effective date. I definitely know that. I'd be able to do the classical margin equation. So we kind of talked about that. Jeff was 66. I'm sorry, Jeff. Now I got to go back and figure out what it was you were asking us about. Or it was definitely testable. You were commenting, I think, on what was testable. Halloween, Cameron. I love it. You should dress up as a sales supervisor.
That's
boy, Cameron. I love Schwab. I've spent most of my career in San Francisco, and Chuck is a business hero of mine. But boy, Cameron, I saw that New York Times article where some guy in prison had identity theft for 11 million. I'm surprised that it was Schwab was anyway involved in that. I'm sure you plugged the gap. I always joke, if you're going to do something shenanigans, don't do it at Schwab, because they'll get you in a heartbeat. Oh man, geez, that's all right, Savannah. You just got to be resilient. I always say, Savannah, when you miss the mark, you're going to have to pass two tests: the test that you need to take and pass, but also a test of resiliency. And I can't tell you how many very successful people in our business have missed the mark more than once. My best broker took the test like 5 times. He would go out and tell people, if anybody knows this stuff, it's me. I've missed it 5 times. Savannah, people invest with you because they like you and they trust you. I don't know if you're going to be in a sales role, but nobody really cares, that you, in fact, sometimes it helps you that you miss the mark. Brian, it looks like you're writing something down there.
The 4 content areas for the Series 66. Identify which one is the weakest area, the lowest score. That's kind of where you want to start to be resilient. When you take this 30 days from now, you want to start with those weakest or lowest areas.
Yeah, I said the same thing. I think the same thing. What I say is to do exactly what Brian's saying. And what I suggest you do is use it as a personal debrief. It's been a couple of weeks, but put a plus or a minus on things. Plus means you think you intellectually own it and it wasn't a problem for you. And a minus would mean something I can do some more work on. And if that can be an area,
I'm sorry. If I may add, you can do that plus and minus with the quick notes.
Yeah.
With one of these sections, whatever section you got the lowest, or you can do it with all sections. You go through all those content areas, put pluses or minuses on areas you think you own, areas that you think you are weak on, areas you saw on the test that you were weak on.
Yeah.
Use those class notes to help.
Yeah, Brian, he and all his class notes, it's based on that content outline of the exam itself. So that's good to know. I think you can get if you just want the content, his quick class notes or whatever. I'm sorry, Brian. I don't mean to not have the right name, but I call it like Cliff Notes, Brian's Cliff Notes.
That's about what they are.
Yeah, and I think that's like $36. So you get the videos for 80. Maybe you already have it, Savannah, but you can get everything Brian has for $100, but with the discount, it's 80. And then you can get his class notes. I think it comes in under 40. And then the PDF of a practice file is like $20. And, like I say, we're not pushing products, but, if you're training consultants, you want to supplement. I think a Kaplan, QBank, and Brian are the best paid supplements. My channel is a free supplement. Sometimes I have to tell people on my channel, you get what you pay for. You didn't pay me any money, so shouldn't have very high expectations. Let's see. So you'll get it, Savannah. You'll get it. So you just got to stick with it. Just stick with it. Okay. Well, we're here every Tuesday, Jeff. So my email, can you see my email behind me? It's deankenny@gmail.com. So if it comes to you, or you want to submit it early before the next live stream, I'm not going to wait till Tuesday. If I can answer you, I'll answer you before Tuesday. Oh man, I'm not a big.
Oh, Savannah.
Yeah, listen. If you already,
Oh.
listen, Savannah. Now, I hope you're not going to do that again. I would like to tell you, I've never heard any horror stories at a testing center.
Yeah,
I have, but way, way less than these stories I hear about remote testing, whether it's your laptop or whether it's them bothering you or, accidentally your battery goes dead. I highly recommend for test takers who are listening to the live stream or the replay of the live stream that you don't do it remotely. Now, if you're already going down there, I don't want to see any negative vibes, but about 50 people, 49 are going to say they didn't like it. There's going one person who thought it was wonderful. So the testing center.
I concur.
Brian, so I would imagine your firm, I'd be awful surprised. I don't know, Savannah, if you're on your own. If you are, I love that's one of the reasons for our live stream is to give some people some camaraderie and let them know they're not in it by themselves. But if you're at a firm, I can't imagine there's a trainer or training department that wants you to do that remotely. 15 business days after the date that the broker, dealer, or investment advisor first delayed the disbursement. Well, you can't delay the disbursement of a fund unless you have permission from the SEC. Is this a mutual fund? Because you can't, you within 7 calendar days, Jeff, you've got to meet that redemption request. Unless either the state administrator has no authority over a mutual fund, it's federally covered. Either the state administrator or APS, I'm not even sure what that means. APS. Yeah. Jeff, I have no idea what this question is about. So let's keep working on trying to figure out what it is. I would tell you that there is no situation. If this is a fund, there would be no reason to delay disbursement once we calculate the NAV, because it's very testable to know that a mutual fund would have to do that within 7 calendar days unless they have permission from the SEC. The state administrator wouldn't be involved in a fund. Now, if it's not a mutual fund, if it's a hedge fund, then it's a private partnership, and you can't get out of that without the permission of the GP. So this is one we need to do some more homework on, I think. With ease, Willie. With ease. He got the P, woo, and didn't even work for it. Oh, my God. I'm not so sure, Willie, people want to hear that. I'm not sure if you go to work tomorrow that you should say, hey, I know what the big deal is.
I
would tell you the draws vary. So I'm always wishing. It sounds like my friend Willie got a dream draw.
Yeah.
Dream draw is everything you studied shows up. And like Willie, you go, I don't know what the big deal is. And then some people go what I call the face of death draw. It's completely random. I'm making this up. But the face of death draw is you're like, oh, my God, you're slacking your way through it. Willie, I had a person in a study group, and her name was SIE. And I thought she was doing them the favor to be in their study group because she was really squared away and the rest of them were still a little wobbly. But then they were going over the exam that they took. They took all the same series, and they had all kinds of questions. And she would go, I didn't get that, and she was prepared for that. And then she would say, I got this question with something like, and they go, what? Financial exploitation. So funds. You mean like senior protecting seniors?
Funds out of an account.
Yes. So you mean like a bank account? It's funds they want to withdraw securities. So in our WSPs, we have to have a section on what we're doing to prevent the exploitation of seniors. And in that, remember, the senior has to agree to it. So my mom is a senior. She can make me a trusted contact person. She doesn't have to make me a trusted contact person. But, that's how most of us do it. Would you like us to have a trusted contact person? Mom's bank calls and says she's trying to wire some money to some prince. And I say, really? I thought she watched enough Dr. Phil to know that's probably not a good idea. They can delay that. And that is, I think, 15 days. That is the hold on the funds. Brian, does that make sense based on what you know about?
Yeah. So we're talking about sending grandpa's money out of his brokerage account.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So,
and the rep or agent or whomever is thinking.
By the way, who was our Schwabi? Remember that story I was telling you? The guy was 88 years old. And the guy who was impersonating him, I just thinking, gee, the guy must be pretty spry of 88. If the guy who was, I would kind of in the back of my mind go, 88, wow, you're not doing bad. How about we Zoom? Justin 7. Okay. So I think that's a question. That's why we got to do homework on these questions. So you just got to stick with Brian and I. When you have a question, we're kind of like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. Just keep working at it. Now we've discovered that we're talking about the firm's written supervisory procedures must have a section on how we prevent the exploitation of seniors. Most of us do it with a trusted contact person, and we can reach out to the trusted contact person and delay, wiring the money or doing whatever the transaction is. So remember, every new hire, Justin, has to read the WSPs and sign and acknowledge they read them and understood them. There's got to be a section on insider trading, protecting seniors, cybersecurity, all that kind of stuff. We both do tutoring. Brendan, Brian, I think, is one of the best values out there. He's $90 an hour unless he's chained unbeknownst to me. And I think you can contact him through his website, Brian. Is that how you contact?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And I tutor as well. And I do it through an automated booking page, deantenneytutoring.setmore.com. And I'm $200 an hour. So I'm a little more expensive than my friend Brian. So I keep joking with there's got to be an arbitrage opportunity where I can profit from that price discrepancy, right? I bill Brian out at 150, pay him 90, and I keep a $60 override. No investment securities. Can I be sponsored by BD? Still employed? Well, Dylan, you would be up to the bank. Their whatever their house requirements are. I mean, or the BD. I don't think there's any rule against that. Brian, do you know any rule where if somebody works at a bank can't get a side hustle at a BD? I don't, but I can imagine that both the bank and the brokerage firm would think that would be an adverse interest and might restrict that activity.
Yeah, unless there is a broker dealer at the bank, that then that gets a little. Yeah.
I would try and be Dylan above board. So if you tell the bank, what are their, I would phrase it as, I want to do something outside the employment of my bank for money part time. What are our restrictions on that? And then they're typically going to have a list of things that they're not going to let you do. But I would imagine that you can take the SIE. That's no problem whatsoever. So if you haven't taken your SIE, get that done, right? Because that'll look good to whatever the scenario is. I can't imagine the bank must be a small bank. It's kind of weird anymore to have a bank that doesn't have some kind of an affiliated brokerage relationship.
Yeah,
that's an old school bank. Justin, so fundamentalist does not mean you're a member of the religious right. So fundamentalist means that you are going to be looking at the economy. Who cares for our purposes? The industry, we do care because we do get every once in a while a question about defensive stock. Company delivers products and services resilient to the business cycle. And then the main thing would be looking at the firm's balance sheet. Maybe an income statement, but on 7, very light on the balance sheet and income statement, because again, the idea is you have a research department that's doing that. So, I'd have a general understanding of the classical balance sheet equation. I would know working capital, current ratio. That is more testable on 65 and 66 than 7. Technical analysis, I would definitely know support and resistance. The support being the bottom line, resistance the top line in a charting pattern. I would know that we place sell stops below the support line to establish a short position. I would know we place buy stops above the resistance line to establish a long position because we're looking for a breakthrough. I would be able to recognize a head and shoulders pattern as a signal of a reversal. Head and Shoulders is not a shampoo you use to take a bath in the stock market. No. A head and shoulders pattern is a signal of a reversal. And a normal head and shoulders is going to be end of the bull and beginning of the bear. Inverted head and shoulders is going to be the end of the bear and the beginning of the bull. Any other fundamental or technical analysis? I would know the indexes. I know the S&P 500, the Wilshire 5000. Did I say Russell 2000 already? Russell 2000 is benchmarks, that we're going to use to do that. Anything you want to add to that, Brian?
No. It depends on the draw. From what I understand, some people get more than others. Some people will say 2 or 3. Some people will say 143.
Yeah.
Depending on the draw.
I think it's light, Justin, because remember the idea here is that you're not doing this as a rep. that we have a research department. I highly recommend, Justin, for technical analysis that on Friday, I want to say 2:30, they have a show called Options Action. And one of my favorite technical analysts is a guy named Carter Braxton. He's now using his last name, which was kind of weird because I thought he always was Carter Braxton. Then he used a lot different last name. I said, what? Anyways, I Googled him and I guess he's, now using it. But anyways, he does, they go call to the charts. And he, does his charting patterns and explains it. Oh, no worries, Jeff. Yeah, that's the nature of the live stream. So no worries. Vulnerable dose. Yeah, no worries. That's just, we're trying to get better at the live streams, and that's just the nature of the live stream. So no worries, no worries. Yeah, I would. STC, yeah, STC is like Kaplan. They're fine vendor. If you find that, Savannah, you've memorized those questions on STC, or you burn through them, then again, I would recommend a supplement. Oh, you've got past perfect. So if you want to be tormented, you got that. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, you can check out Brian's free stuff on YouTube as well before you, click the button to buy anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I hate that, Mr. Funny Dog. I hate sending out negative vibes.
I'm really worried now.
Yeah. So what do you think, Brian, now that we've sent out the
Did
negative
he go
vibes?
through his security checks with the testing center, right? Because they have to do that pre-check.
Yeah, I've had people, Mr. Funny Dog, make sure you can, all you can do to make your remote site the way they want it, because they're going to make you show camera. And I had a guy who was moving his laptop around. He accidentally unplugged himself. So I would check that out and just, try and make it as smooth as you possibly can. The other thing, Mr. Funny Dog, I would tell you is that you can't use it's going to be an electronic notepad instead of real scratch paper. And that would freak me out. I like having a real, piece of paper, or dry erase paper. So I don't know. It is what it is, right? It is what it is.
And the electronic calculator too.
Yeah, electronic calculator. Yeah, there you go. Boom, boom, boom. So Savannah's giving us some Funny Dog. There you go. Savannah has tried and true in terms of doing this remotely. So there's some suggestions from her about it.
Don't let the lid close. Yes, please. Yeah.
Well, and the other thing, Mr. Funny Dog, I've had like weird, it's like, I don't want to say they're stalkers, but they tell me that sometimes the people doing it remotely, they get interrupted at the weirdest times with like the proctor just like checking in. I'm not sure why they need to announce themselves and say, hi, I'm proctor, so. All right, are coming down to a close here. There you go. There you go. By the way, our community on Tuesday is all about chatting with each other too. So I just love it when we get all our victorious test takers, and even Savannah, thanks, for coming. Even you missed the mark just to come so we can buck you up a little bit and get you back up and running towards your next attempt. And so please, just every Tuesday, know there's people in a similar situation like you, and this is a place for us to convene and have some fun and fellowship and talk about what's on your exam. Okay, well, I think I'm through. If I miss you, by the way, in the live stream, just re-enter it. But I think I'm current, and I think I got everybody. Anybody got anything else before we? Look, I got one more here. I'm leaving the bank. Okay, so did you do your SIE already, Dylan?
Yeah, you got to do the SIE.
Yeah, so you may as well do the SIE because that doesn't,
it doesn't require a broker-dealer sponsorship. They're going to look at that. You can't take a 7 without sponsorship.
Yeah.
You got to take the SIE anyway. Take the SIE.
Yeah, do the SIE right away because that'll help you in your look for sponsorship because you've already made shown some initiative, and they know that they can start at step 2 instead of step 1 with you. I like old school banks. I know they're still around, some of them, but I had a guy who was a client of mine. Let's say his last name was Smith, and he writes you a check. It would be on the Smith State Bank. I thought that was so cool. Have his own family bank.
He says the SIE is already done.
I see that. So, okay. So now it's just finding sponsorship.
Right.
I don't know what kind of job or position, Dylan, you're looking for, but Vanguard is still hiring. Fidelity is still hiring. I don't know Schwab. We had somebody from Schwab. Schwab has been hiring. I'm not sure if they're still hiring. They just had their earnings. It was pretty good. I think I would be more interested, Dylan, in a good learning experience rather than money. If I were starting my career, that worked out well for me. It's a buffet. Take what you like, leave what you don't. But if I were starting my career, I would be looking for the best learning, because in our business, you will make money. If you stick with it any length of time, our business is wonderful. But in the beginning, I think it's more important to be learning. And unfortunately, I've had some people where I told them that and they did it and they call me and they're mad because they could have been making more money and they're working really hard. And, and I don't know. I mean, that's our business, working really hard. So I guess there's this idea of, what does it go? Quiet kidding, where we do the minimum effort required to get a paycheck. I don't come from that school. So no, dividend reinvestment has to be offered at NAV. So dividend reinvestment, it didn't used to be that way, but it is now. So the dividend reinvestment has to be at the NAV. Any other questions or comments before we call it a night? Brian, thanks so much. Brian missed last Tuesday. He called me. He said he was doing his taxes, and boy, I'm jealous. I'm sure, the problems of the rich, right? All those videos he's selling. Now he's going, what's that about? All right. So anything else before we call it today? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Get the pass. Remember, inch by inch, your exam is a cinch. And
you take the test. Don't let the test take you.
See you next Tuesday, everybody.